So it's always really great for me to be able to do a workshop with real people in a real place, because I think this is the time where you can learn and appreciate what we do much, much more than just looking on the internet and maybe just doing it on your own at home. I think today I'd like to use it as an opportunity to not just share my kind of experience and knowledge, but maybe give you an idea of how you can aquascape at home, but also appreciate what you already have with your aquascapes at home a bit more, or appreciate it in a different way. Because I think there's something really quite magical about what we do. And I think there's different ways that we can look at it in order to help ourselves feel better. And also create something even more beautiful that you can connect with even more kind of strongly. So I'd like today to be just really kind of relaxed and chill vibes. Please feel free to ask any questions throughout. Just shout at me or put your hand up or whatever. Yeah, so we'll just take it nice and easy. It's going to be about 4 hours or so. I'll be here probably afterwards to have a chat with, sign in your books and selfies or whatever you want to do. So please use me as you wish. Learn from me, and hopefully we can have some fun as well, have a bit of a laugh. Yeah, it's just it's great to see you. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. A bit about me. I've been a hobbyist for about 25 years. I've been professional for about 10 years. And it's just such a beautiful way to live, with aquascaping. Even if it's just a hobby, it's just something that you can come home to and enjoy. And yeah, deeply kind of rewarding. It's like the more energy you put into creating something, the more reward you kind of get out of it. So let's get started. This is a Jewel Rio 290. This is it's very new, actually, new to Jewel. And so you can see it's quite a tall aquarium. So we need to think about that with our aquascape and maybe our fish selection. So think about stocking maybe a taller bodied fish. Quite often when we're planning our aquascape, the fish selection is often something that you may want to focus on. So if you want to keep a certain type of fish, you can design the aquascape around that, in terms of obviously water chemistry and suitability for making sure it lives comfortably, but also how it looks. So an angelfish would probably look more aesthetically balanced in here than a long kind of thin fish, because of the nature of the height versus the width. Yeah, we call that aspect ratio. So that's something to bear in mind, when you're aquascaping. And also think about where is the aquarium going to go in your home, and where are you going to be viewing it from? Okay, so are you going to be kind of sat here and looking at it, square on, in which case, you can actually be quite varied in your composition, or are you going to kind of be mostly sitting over here, in which case, you might want to do a triangular layout and have low things down here and tall things up here, and vice versa if you're sat over here, a triangular that way. So think about where you're viewing your aquarium from in the longer term. Okay, let's think about our aquascape. So I'm a big fan of the nature aquarium style of aquascape, which you can see around you. Invented by Takashi Amano. He sadly passed away 10 years ago now, 2015. But he came up with this principle of using nature, scenes from nature outside, and kind of using that as inspiration and putting that inside the aquarium. So I'm a huge fan of that, and I just think it helps us to kind of, when we're living with these things in our homes, I think it just brings you a little bit closer to nature and makes you feel more relaxed. And it's just such an interesting thing to live with. Everything's growing, evolving, and you as the kind of creator and the maintainer of that aquascape have, a guiding hand of how the aquascape kind of evolves. So think about, planning your aquascape. Are you going to kind of copy someone's? That's okay. Have you seen an aquascape you love on the internet or in a book or a magazine, and you want to use that as inspiration? That's okay. Make sure your system is capable of growing those plants. So when you go through your plant list, look at the most difficult plants and then make sure your equipment is capable of growing that most difficult plant, okay? So, if you choose something like, I don't know, Hemianthus cuba, this carpeting plant down here, that's more of an advanced species. So you definitely will be needing, high levels of lighting, good CO2 injection, good circulation levels, nutrient-rich substrates, liquid fertilizers, all of that good stuff. However, if you wanted to just to grow, I don't know, anubias, or trident fern, for instance, you might not need CO2 injection or lots of light, and you can keep it nice and slow and steady. So, think about when you're aquascaping or creating a new aquarium from scratch, think about what is your actual goal, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it to have something to relax and just enjoy, watching grow nice and slowly? Or do you want to do it to kind of stretch yourself? Do you want to kind of learn loads about trimming, growing advanced plants, having fun with testing and things like some people are really into this? Or do you want to take things like super slow, just grow anubias in the dark, that kind of thing? And there's obviously everything in between. So just think about, how you see your hobby. Are you a geeky kind of numbers guy, chasing things and trying to grow things the best you can? Or are you more of a chill kind of guy? Or are you a contest guy and you're just obsessed with creating the most beautiful thing you can? Just so think about your own identity, if you like, as an aquascaper, and then you can kind of craft something that's suitable for that. Does that make sense? Yeah, perfect. Okay, I did have a little look at the hardscape yesterday, so I do have a rough idea of what we're going to do, but it is going to be very much organic kind of thing. I haven't even chosen the plant layout yet, so it's going to be very much, you're going to learn with me and go through the journey with me, and hopefully some of you guys might be able to help me out as well with plant prep and things like that. So, any questions so far before we get going? No? Cool, I'm just going to have a little drink of water.
One question.
Yeah.
Where did you get your inspiration for?
Actually, I was married before. My ex-wife actually.
It's not what I was.
No one knows. It's a funny story. So she was very much, when the wives are trying to keep up with the other wives, if the other wife has a nice aquarium, then they want a nice aquarium. So she was like, oh, so-and-so down the road has a beautiful aquarium. I think we should have a beautiful aquarium. So I've actually always kind of loved aquariums as a kid, never kept one, but my uncle had one. So I always thought I'd love an aquarium. And then the wife said, let's get an aquarium. And then I've always loved nature, so I thought planted aquarium. So actually bought loads of plants, but they're actually house plants. They weren't suitable for aquariums, so they actually all died. But because of the kind of person I was, I didn't want to give up, and I researched it. And then I found out about Takashia Mano, and then that was it. I was just obsessed. So that was sort of early 2000s. Yeah, so pretty much as soon as I discovered Takashia Mano, that was like an epiphany, like a bit of a spiritual moment where you realize this is where you want to take the direction of your hobby. And then my hobby then took a direction for my life. So it all started off really with my ex-wife. Yeah.
How you start? Nowadays, if you are going
for inspiration for an aquascape, yeah. It just often starts off with the materials that I have available, actually, and then from there I might have more of a concept about what I want to create. But yeah, it normally starts with the raw material. So if I go to a shop like here, it's limited by obviously the materials I have to hand. So I'll often pick stuff that I know is going to be hopefully easy to maintain in the long term. I do like a long-term aquascape, the one that can be maintained for several years if possible. So the hardscape and the plants will be influenced by that long-term thing. So I tend to go for crypts, anubias, ferns, bucephalandra, slow-growing, carpeting. Don't tend to use stem plants in the long term because I just find them too much to maintain So they're great for the beginning of a tank, but in the long term, I don't really use stems so much. But yeah, inspiration you can get from anywhere. Other people, landscapes, dreams, you name it. There's no limit to inspiration. Okay, so we've got some beautiful, what do you call this? Is it riverwood, driftwood?
Here it's called hornwood, but usually
Hornwood,
it's quite
yeah. So really, really beautiful material to work with. It is worth investing in decent hardscape, you know, spend some good money because it can last a lifetime and then you can use it for future aquascapes in different ways, you know. So it is worth investing in good hardscape. If you're lucky enough to live in a house with a garden, you know, you can just stash it in the garden like I do. But yeah, make sure you pick the right pieces. So hopefully your shop will have a dojo, you know, where you can experiment with pieces, or you can literally take measurements if you wish. But a big beginner mistake to make is actually not using big enough pieces or more impactful enough. So don't be shy about using like really bold hardscape. The hardscape can actually almost be enough on its own, you know, for a decent aquascape. Although I do love to use plants as well, which obviously we'll use later. So when we're looking at our hardscape, we're actually using the same kind of, we wouldn't use, you know, multiple different types of wood because it wouldn't look so natural, although they do have a slightly different kind of colour, but they will equalise over time once they're in the water. So you can kind of think about how is that best going to look in the aquarium. So just look at it at all angles and just have an experiment. You know, take your time. If you're doing this at home, obviously you know, enjoy the process. Take your time doing it. You can take as long as you like. You know, I have an aquarium at home now. Which is it's an Oase Scaper Line 90, similar sort of size to this, and it's had hardscape in there now for 6 weeks. You know, completely dry, and I just spend a little bit of time every day. You know, just tinkering around, playing around with it. Maybe even take a photo and keep a folder of the different photos, and you can go back and pick out your favourite layout. But just take your time doing it, enjoy the process, don't rush it. So I really like this wood. It's quite gnarly, it's got lots of texture, lots of detail, lots of opportunities there to insert your epiphyte plants, your attaching plants, which I love to use. But yeah, do take your time choosing your hardscape. It's such an important part of the aquascape. If you get the hardscape right, you know, it can be quite forgiving later on in terms of your plants. You know, it can still look really effective even if your plants aren't really that fantastic. Another top tip is even if you don't have like one beautiful piece of wood, you can always add smaller pieces together. I mean, look at a good perfect example is this. You know, that's an extreme example, but you can buy lots of smaller pieces and then I think that looks quite nice there. It looks a bit odd. We've got obviously a big gap underneath, but that's going to be the substrate's going to fill that up, and we're going to put some stones in as well. But I think I'm quite happy with that as a starting point. It's really accentuating the height of the aquarium. You can see the aspect ratio is obviously quite tall, as we mentioned earlier. But yeah, it's going to be a nice kind of island, you know, composition, I think. So, you know, sort of aim for mid-groundy kind of plants all the way around here, tall plants in the centre, and then either cosmetic kind of sand foreground, gravel foreground, or carpeting. So we can, if we're doing carpeting, it's quite a deep tank, but we will be upgrading the lighting, which will be able to grow carpet, especially if you're using kind of easier species like Marsolea or Liliopsis, maybe Eleocharis would work. But we'll take a view, see what plants we have available, and then we'll make. I'm not a big fan of Monte Carlo. I like it as an attaching plant. Prefer it as I always prefer a grassy, you know, plant for the foreground. It just looks more natural. Okay, so we have some beautiful. Do we call it Ryu stone here? This is this is quite interesting. It's actually very limestone based, so sort of calcium in it. So it will boost your hardness, your GH, maybe your KH as well a bit. So depending on your water chemistry at home, do you have hard water, soft water? Soft. So this is really going to affect But we're using RO here, aren't we? Or you want to use?
But we start with tap water and then probably change to RO.
Are you happy using this?
Yeah, it's fine. I have it on the tank.
Okay, yeah. We won't use too much of it, but just do be mindful it will affect your water chemistry, okay? But it is beautiful. You can see, you know, full of character, full of these kind of gouges, these beautiful textures. And I think it works really well with this type of wood as well. It's quite a wild kind of vibe to it. So I'm starting off with the biggest rock, kind of. These are similar sizes. Yeah. So now I'm looking at the stone. You know, stone has character. You know, it's again with the same with the woods. You know, take your time picking the rocks. You know, have a really good look at them. You know, let it speak to you almost. You know, it makes me feel kind of like, yeah, it's been around a good few thousand years. You know, it's like seeing a few things. So now we're like, which is the most attractive kind of natural looking side to it? So we've got this side, quite dramatic here. And then think about how is it going to kind of fit in to your layout there. So I think this side here. Cool. And then we've got some special glue later which we'll use, and that is going to glue the wood to the rock, and then the wood isn't going to float, hopefully. So that works quite well. We've got the strata like lining in with the grain of the wood quite nicely. Okay, now we might not need this. This is just going to get in the way, I think. We might put that in later. Now, same as before, let's just look at it at all the angles. Also bear in mind, when it's wet, it takes on a completely different appearance, goes much darker, actually looks much more beautiful. So now it looks much more attractive. Now that one looks weird, but never mind. Nice. So that fits in nicely there. That bit of wood just runs through that groove there. So we can either glue that there or maybe put some glue and some epiphytes around there to hide the glue. That would work quite well. If you're at home, you could obviously pre-soak the wood. You might have a big water container in the garden or a pond, or if your wife's very understanding, a bath maybe. No. Yeah. Yeah, I prefer gluing. Yeah. And everything's really stable. So when you even the wood, yeah, it's better to glue because when you come to maintaining it, you don't want to be knocking things over. Thank you. Yeah. So this is like an expanding foam. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. It's really handy for bigger aquariums. You know, obviously for nano tanks with intricate work, this isn't going to work. It expands really quite big, so just be careful using it. So I'm just I'll start off with a bit here. Can you see? There we go. See what I mean? It comes out quite quickly. Yeah, but it does dry quickly, hopefully, so that's the advantage. Yeah, it's not as easy to use as the other one. I actually don't like gloves. I think I like to feel everything. You know, I think scaping's about senses, like sight, even smell. You know, you can smell the fresh plant. You can smell if a tank's off. Obviously, sight, hearing. You know, you can hear the equipment. You know, hear the water trickling. You know, but touching as well. You know, I love to get the hands wet, feel the plants. One of my favourite things is when I'm maintaining a really mature tank full of plants is just get your hands in there and give it a good, you know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think kids, you know, like children don't get dirty enough. I don't know about in Portugal, but UK, everything's so clean and don't let your kids play outside. But, you know, I think it's really important that we literally connect with nature, you know, whether that's like in an aquarium or gardening or just going to the park and enjoying what you see. It's so important. But yeah, I don't wear gloves. I don't know why that's relevant, but yeah, I don't like gloves. Senses, touch, I like to touch things, so gloves kind of limit the touch. Okay, time for, now the question is, do we want to go kind of cosmetic sand foreground, you know, detail, gravel and stones at the front, and then plant behind? Or do we want to go like a full-on carpet? I don't know, we've got loads of plants to use, haven't we? Yeah, we'll go full, I think, yeah. So this is 2-hour Aquarist. Has everyone heard of the 2-hour Aquarist? Quite a well-known scaping brand, like really quite high-end and good.
You need a cup or no?
Nah, that's fine, yeah. Do you just fancy cutting the bags open and passing them to me? Is that right? Have you used this before, this stuff?
No, it's the first time. The first time you want to try it out.
Is it the same? Is it the same as regular soil? Do you know?
Yeah, it's more like Indian style, more organic. If you smell it, you can sense like the organics.
Oh yeah.
It's a more humid soil.
Yeah, yeah. So, if this is like all the other soils I use, is everyone familiar with aquarium soil? It's one of the best substrates you can get. It's full of nutrients. It normally helps to reduce the hardness and the pH. It's very porous, so it's a really good home for bacteria as well. Paint. Do you have a paintbrush?
Yeah. What?
Thank you, mate.
Come in.
Some soils will leach ammonia, you know, so just be careful when you're adding your fish. Normally wait a few weeks for the filter to cycle. Yeah, perfect, thank you. But do you have a paintbrush at all? No? Paintbrush. Yeah. You know, when you're looking at an aquarium, you're looking at it as a system, and there's kind of 5 or 6 different main elements. You've got, you know, the most important, you know, going from most important to least important. You know, you've got your lighting, you've got your CO2 if you're using CO2, and then arguably, you know, liquid fertilizers, you could argue are more important than the substrate, because you can grow plants in plain sand if you've got liquid fertilizers, you know. So, you know, the substrate is important, but it's not the most vital thing. But it is worth, if you've got the budget and you want to get the best results, then invest in a good substrate system. If you use a good substrate with liquid fertilizer, that's the best thing for the plants, because the plants they're taking their food through their roots, but also through their leaves. So they take them through their roots, through the substrate, through the soil, and then they take them through the leaves through a liquid fertilizer. So you know, if you do both, the plant is just really happy, and a happy plant means less algae, basically. So my aquascapes are very kind of basic. Is normally a strong hardscape, foreground, midground, background plants, and then attaching plants at the ends. It's really quite a straightforward process. So I try to make aquascaping as sort of approachable as I can, really. So it will tolerate shades. It does grow. The more light you have, the bigger it will grow. Some plants stay like more compact and smaller with high light, but this will get much bigger. It grows like a rosette, so it actually grows kind of eventually just, yes, it is a kind of stem plant. It grows upwards, but it grows a new rows of leaves. So gradually it will, you know, get quite tall. So it will need maintaining, but it is relatively slow growing. And I just really like the kind of grassy, quite a waxy leaf, quite robust, compared to something like Helanthrium, which is much more of a sort of a thinner leaf, if you like.
When you need to trim them, there is any special care that you need?
Not really. You can not really. You can literally just like hack it. You know, just cut it square, and then you can probably even replant that cutting. It just looks a little bit ugly for a little while, but that's just is what it is. Or if you wanted to be a bit more careful, you could actually just remove the individual blades from the rows and just trim it that way, and then just throw. Yeah, I'd actually go from the top, or just look at the plant and see, because the bottom parts might be the unhealthiest, so you take them away. But otherwise, I'd probably remove from the top, and then it just looks more natural. Yeah, thank you.
I'll be the brown part of it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And if you want to speak a little bit about
Clips.
yourself,
Yeah. Put them with the trident fern. Yeah, put all the epiphytes together. But I'll talk about that at the end. Yeah, thanks, mate. So when we're planting, we're always thinking about what's the maximum size that it can get to, you know, and think about how that's going to kind of impact on the overall aquascape. So, you know, very simply put, you wouldn't put like really big background plants in the front. So, you know, think about how the tank's going to maybe look in 6 months, you know, or if you're a beginner, there's nothing wrong with just buying loads of different plants, you know, loads of different species, and then try that, just almost planting them anywhere, you know, maybe with a little bit of thought, and then just figuring out what works for you, what kind of species works for you. So if you have softer water, you know, you actually have more options really compared to hard water. So you're quite lucky if you do have soft water already. So you can see I'm planting around the rocks here. And this is going to act as a transition from the shorter plants that are going to go around. So I've got some parva that will look really nice. It's a similar texture to the arrow cowl on it, but it's much shorter. So it's just going to look, you know, really natural next to it. So top tip, you can pour it right against the front glass and then just stroke it backwards just to make it nice and neat and easy. Okay, that's fine. I'd always also recommend when you're buying plants, try to get them as fresh as possible from your shop. Sometimes, you know, the plant could be in the shop for a few weeks and it's not in the best condition. But if you buy them fresh, you're going to get the best chance of success. So you can see the textures work really well together with the parva and the Areocaulon. Do we have other carpeting species? Maybe in the 1-2 grow?
Yeah, I can get Monte Carlo, Elocari, let me see.
Eliocaris, no Monte Carlo today.
Actually, you want Monte Carlo?
Eliocaris or, Eliocaris would be good. The reason a lot of plants really struggle underwater is they don't have enough CO2 to be happy, you know. So if you think about a plant in nature, about 95% of aquarium plants in nature grow out of water. They prefer to grow out of water. So they do struggle underwater, especially without CO2, you know. So you're kind of fooling the plant into thinking it's in the air almost. You know, some plants will even flower underwater. I mean, what's the point in that? It's not going to pollinate, but it must think it's a survival mechanism of some description, isn't it? So, yeah. So I'm just mindful of planting too much around here. This is obviously going to be really shaded. So if we do plant there, it will be a really sort of low light tolerant plant. Oh, thank you.
Just use it now?
Yeah, I'll use it in a minute. Yeah, thank you so much. Just give a spray in the tank a second. Thank you.
What about shadows? This island composition?
Shadows? Yeah, not so much. All the plants we're using today will tolerate the shade, and the lighting we have will be more than powerful enough. So but it is, yeah, this is the worst affected area around here. We might not even plant there at all. Sometimes it's nice to have a dark area in an aquascape. So, you know, when you're thinking about a composition, an aquascape, when you're looking at it, you can think about it in different ways. You've got different colours, different textures, but you've also got light and shade, you know, and it's important to have some shaded areas to keep the balance, you know. Otherwise, it's just too bright, too monotone. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Nice. So when you look at this aquarium, it's actually very dark. You know, obviously it's a black aquarium, black cabinet. We've got dark soil, dark grey stone, dark wood. When we put the lights on at the end, you know, the plants are just going to be the main attraction. They're really going to contrast really well with everything that's dark. So it should be quite.
But also, it's important to have some dark areas inside.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, it's art, isn't it? So it's always down to you as the artist. It's completely up to you. We just suggest people like me in the kind of public sphere. We just give you our ideas, you know, and we're just sort of I'm not even the guy that that has the information. I'm the guy that's just passing the information on through me. You know, I'm not the gatekeeper of it. I'm just, you know. So what I say is just guidelines. You know, isn't the truth. You come up with your own truth, if you like. I'm just the guy that just points you in a direction that you can take, or, you know. So, you know what I mean? Sorry for the rambling. That's what I do. Okay, we're going to move on to some Eriocaris. Eriocaris. Is it Acicularis?
Also got here pockets.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's higher than this.
Oh, thank you. Eriocaris hairgrass. Most people have seen this. Really lovely carpeting plant. It will grow in here, even though it's quite a deep tank. But it should grow quite slowly. And you can actually keep it growing like for months, maybe even a year, without needing to do much. You can just almost trim it back. Eventually it might get really tight and kind of matted, start to go a bit kind of anaerobic underneath, get a bit of cyanobacteria. You know, then it's time to just peel it all out. Basically, it will come out in one whole carpet, and then you can just separate it out, keep the healthiest portions, and then replant, and then start over again. There's no reason why any of these plants you can't keep, you know, almost indefinitely. It's just all about maintenance and boredom. You know, so you might just get bored of growing that same plant, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, swapping things out, having a change around. You don't have to do a complete rescape, like a hard reset. You know, you can always just change the foreground, change the midground a bit, maybe even change a bit of hardscape if you're feeling crazy. You don't have to do the whole, you know. I often find the most rewarding aquascapes are the ones that you do look after for the longest time, you know, because you've put so much energy and patience into that thing, you know, and you see it evolving over the months, maybe even the years, and it evolves with you, you know. It's got part of you in that aquarium, you know. You've literally sweated in it, probably, you know. If you've got your hands in there, it's literally got part of you in that tank, you know. You can go as deep as you like with this hobby, yeah. And you'll notice we're using loads of plants today, and that's on purpose because we like to show the plants off, but also the more plants you have, the less chance of algae you get. But you do need to like really look after those plants. So, you know, once you've planted, don't just sort of relax. You need to do your water changes, you know, otherwise you will get into algae problems, especially with a new tank. If you think about algae and plants are always kind of fighting each other. They're always in a competition with each other. So the more plants you have, the better you look after those plants. So the faster those plants are growing, you know, the more healthy and robust those plants are, the less chance algae can get. So, you know, in an aquarium system, you've got two main foods basically for algae and plants. You've got the light and you've got nutrients. So if you think about light and nutrients as like a limiting kind of store, if you have loads of plants and they're growing really healthy, they're going to use all of that nutrient and light before the algae can. But if you have not enough plants, but you have loads of light and nutrients, then the algae will get it. So you think about that kind of balance, you know, the kind of that constant kind of warfare that's going on. Now I'm going to think about the Bucephalandra. That it does exactly the same as Anubias in terms of what it can grow in, but it does do well in higher lighting as well. So you can even, you know, could be a bit crazy and sort of pop it up here. Whereas if I did that with Anubias, that would definitely get algae. So we've got lots of different Bucephalandra species here, or Bucephalandra. Yeah, that's sorted all of blue, Kedagang, and red. They all look quite similar at the moment. But once they've adapted and they get used to the lighting, they can change colour quite a lot. But the good thing about Bucephalandra is it does really well with higher lighting, so you can say do that sort of thing. And now it's a case of just looking around the aquarium, look where the gaps are, and then think what will look good in that gap, and then just keep filling the gaps basically. And the really cool thing about epiphytes or attaching plants is that they just give this sense of maturity. You know, they give this like sense that the hardscape has been, you know, around for many years. It gives this kind of ancient forest feel almost. This is really true with plants like mosses as well. It really gives a strong kind of ancient effect. I like to, when I'm thinking of the aquarium, when it's empty, it's a blank piece of paper, you know, it's a blank canvas. But it's just not a normal canvas, it's three-dimensional. You know, you've got your length, your width, and your height. And then you're not using paint, you know, you're using decoration materials, you know, your wood, your rocks, and your plants. And it's your job, you know, as the artist, you know, to create this three-dimensional work of art, you know, as best you can. And there's so many different ways, there's infinite different ways you can achieve that. So it's kind of up to you about, you know, what paint you want to use and how you want to use it. There's no right or wrong. Well, there is, but you know, it's up to you. You know, there's so much information out there now. It's almost overwhelming how much information. So, you know, try to just stick to one or two, you know, credible sources. Don't get confused. And then, you know, you'll find out who you can trust, who's growing. You know, the proof is in the pudding, as we say in England. You know, look at what people do, not what they say sometimes. That's the best way, you know. And just have fun, that's the main thing. It's a hobby. It's designed to be fun. You know, people take things so seriously these days where, you know, life itself is a bit random, isn't it? You know, no one knows why we're really here. We might as well have fun while we are here. So, you know, we're kind of colouring in, you know, colouring in as a kid, you know, or painting my numbers. Remember that? You don't have that? It's basically what we're doing here, you know, but there's, the beauty is that these things are growing, you know, and evolving, and the whole kind of, the thing changes over time, and it's your kind of, your job is to witness those changes, but also kind of influence the changes into the direction that you want. You know, you might have an end vision in mind, or you might not, and that's okay. But just, you know, every time you do a little bit of maintenance, it's an opportunity to sort of make a little change, or maybe not. but just kind of view these little interactions that you have with this thing. Every time you work on it, it's an opportunity to do something really special, you know, not just for this thing, but for you, you know. It's like self-care. You know, we all have, most of us have quite stressful lives, and, you know, the aquarium is just somewhere that's really safe. It's just you and that thing, you know, and you can just enjoy that time. And do kind of plan the time as well. Don't just maybe wait until things go wrong and then look at the aquarium. You know, actually proactively maintain it, you know, preventative maintenance. So it's always better to prevent problems from happening before they happen, you know. So keep up your regular maintenance, you know, put it in your diary if you need to, schedule it. And it's your time, you know, for you to enjoy. In the first month is like big frequent water changes, you know, ideally almost every day, you know, for the first couple of weeks if you can, every other day, at least 3 times a week, you know, for the first 2 weeks, I would say 50% water change, especially if you're using a soil, you know, lots of plants. These things are going to be releasing a lot of organics that can trigger algae. So we need to dilute those organics with big water changes. You know, if you have access to mature filter media, this is really helpful. If you've got another aquarium running and you're setting up a brand new aquarium, you know, then think about using some of that old media in your new filter, and then you can speed things along. But yeah, big water changes, depending on the plants and the kind of your lighting and CO2 depends on how much liquid fertilizer you use. So if you're using a lot of in vitro plants, actually these are a lot more hungry because they're babies and they need feeding more. So you want to use more liquid fertilizers then. So there's a little bit of a hack here. So there's a really big gap here where I want to tuck probably the last of the Anubias. But the gap's too big at the moment. So if I just wedge in this piece of wood here, it needs to be a bit longer. Can I have something like that, but longer? So we just fill in that gap there. And then magically we can cover that with our Anubias. It's cheating, but hey, it's okay. You're here to learn the techniques, aren't you? I just hate using glue as well. I hate it. Yeah. Or tying fishing line, or you know, I just really like. It's more natural, isn't it? You don't get fishing line and glue in nature. You know, so. Algae's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, everyone loves algae. Algae, I actually have a love-hate relationship with algae. It's there as information for you. It's saying that something's happening, you know, whether too much light, too little light, too many nutrients, not enough nutrients, not enough maintenance, not enough circulation, you know, all of these is telling you something, and that's useful, you know, it's just a warning sign, potentially. But, you know, algae, every single aquarium, if it's a healthy aquarium, will have some level of algae. It's just whether it gets out of control, you know, and what is out of control, that's up to you. You know, some people will look at a tank like that, see some algae in the carpeting area, and that's not acceptable. I personally don't mind. You know, it's just part of the amount of effort and energy to get rid of it. It isn't worth it to just accept that it's there. You might as well just accept it and not put so much effort and energy trying to get rid of it. But that's down to you. What's your tolerance of too much algae? You know, that's something you have to figure out for yourself. But the the mossballs, the algae, or the blackbeard algae, you know, staghorn algae. Basically, an algae that makes you think, you look at it and you don't like it. You have that feeling of, ugh, you know, that's when you know. If you look at it and you're like, it's kind of okay. Yeah, exactly. And it also depends on this, you know, a relatively complex sort of textured layout like this, algae is going to just sort of blend in. If you had like a Zen, like minimalist irigumi with just like a Monte Carlo carpet and 3 stones, algae is just going to look, you know, really obvious and horrible. So this is another reason, you know, why potentially I like this kind of style, because it's a lot more forgiving. It's a lot more, yeah, and working with nature, you know, rather than trying to control nature so much. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, rocks and wood will get, you know, algae. Amano shrimp always tend to be pretty good. You know, most aquascapes, Amano shrimp, even cherry shrimp, they can help a little bit. Try not to rely so much on fish for algae control, but bigger tanks, you know, Siamese algae eaters are really effective. But, you know, actually the best long-term defense against algae is healthy plant growth. You know, and healthy plant growth is having enough plants, looking after the plants, maintaining them, feeding them well, and then the algae won't be a problem because the plants are looking after that for you. So actually, if you look after the plants in an aquarium, that by default looks after the whole aquarium, because the plants are the best filter, they're the best water purifier, they're the best thing at producing oxygen. You know, so think of yourself as rather than an aquascaper, you can think of yourself as a gardener as well, you know, and a plant grower. My favourite questions, I think something with a taller body, something like maybe even something with a vertical stripe, so like a Pentazona barbs maybe, or tiger barbs. I think do we have angelfish already in here, or?
I got a couple of.
Yeah, I mean angelfish would look nice. It's a nice size for the scalare, some of the scalare varieties. But definitely a taller, you know. Just thinking of the colours, so something that's going to contrast with the black. Yeah, so yeah, I can imagine like a big shoal of like 50 Pentazona. Do you know Pentazona barb? It's like five vertical stripes. They're like an orange, iridescent orangey colour. You know, a shoal of 40 in there would look lovely. And then maybe some, just for some sort of kind of really interesting activity with the lower plants, you could have like celestial pearl dahlias or something. Do you know the? Yeah, like Cerosporas. They'd be really cute in here as well. I'll probably go for an Asian. We've got mostly crypts in here, Eriocaulon, we've got Microsaurum, Bucophilandra. You know, all these are Asian species of plants, so tend to go for more of an Asian theme. So you know, barbs would suit that, definitely. The only other plants we've got are the African, which are the Bulbitis and the Anubias. So while they're doing that, I'll just give you a brief kind of summary of what we've talked about, and then we'll take some questions and have a good chat at the end. So we talked about nature aquarium, what it means, you know, transferring natural landscapes into the aquarium space. And we talked about Amano. He was a huge figure, and he still is, even though he sadly passed away. We talked about the substrate. We're using 2-hour aquarists, what's it called? Feast. So time will tell if it works or not. I've never used it before, but I'm sure it's a great product. We talked about whether we were going to use like a cosmetic sand foreground, you know, like something like this, you know, and then use the plants behind in soil. But we've got so many beautiful plants to use up, and I really love to plant really heavy from the outset. So that's what we did, 100% soil. And then we went foreground plants, midground, background, and then attaching. So the foreground plants, a real complex mix of the Eriocaulon Vietnam, Cryptocorini parva, Eliocharis acicularis, Marsilea hirsuta, and Crypt albedo brown. And then behind that, we had a mix of Cryptocorini becketii pecci and Cryptocorini wenditii tropica. And they're going to grow again, all these are going to grow together, you know, blended together really naturally. And then behind that, a mixture of 2 crypts. That's the spiralis red and the crispitula. They'll all grow to the surface. And there'll be a nice mix of kind of reddy brown and greeny brown colours all across the back there. And then finally, we added our attaching plants or epiphyte plants, which was a mixture of Anubias petites, which we tend to plant towards the substrate where there's less light. And then Bucovalandra, blue, red, and Kedigang kind of spread randomly around the scape. And then finally, trident fern and bulbitis. Hardscape was Sirius stone and driftwood, wood, some kind of wood. Very simple. 3 stones, 2 pieces of wood, loads of beautiful plants, some soil, some great lighting shortly. And there we go. Classic nature aquarium, low maintenance, high impact. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Final touch on the lid.
Inside over here.
Make it both.